Kai and Taylor want the best for their child, always striving to make sure Maxie is stimulated and has the best resources to enhance both physical and cognitive development. At 5 years old, Maxie attends kindergarten, plays organized soccer, practices piano, and has plenty of coloring sheets and educational games at home to explore. Kai and Taylor like eating a wide variety of foods, and they offer Maxie different tastes, textures, and flavors to encourage a preference for healthy options. Kai and Taylor are concerned they may be overscheduling Maxie, yet they also worry that they may not be offering enough stimulation because they are both at work until dinner time. They recognize that many other upper-middle-class parents struggle with these same issues, and they get differing opinions from their friends. They often find themselves wondering, do all young children prefer to eat pizza, nuggets, and peanut butter sandwiches, or is Maxie's preference for these items a cause for concern? When is the best time to teach Maxie a second language? Which does Maxie need more right now, free play or structured activities? Is screen time inherently bad for Maxie, or could it be beneficial? This chapter provides scientific and practical answers to these types of questions and others about physical and cognitive development in early childhood. Tyrone is 6 years old. Like other children his age, he is experiencing significant changes in his physical abilities, including gross and fine motor skills, sensory development, and coordination. When Tyrone visits his grandmother, she marks his height on a wall chart as a memento. Just a few years ago, Tyrone was fumbling through his first steps, but now he is standing tall and running confidently at the park with school friends. He is no longer the infant who chews on board books, but a first grader who eagerly reads. In this section, you'll explore topics related to the physical health of children between the ages of 3 and 6, such as typical growth during this period of life, and optimal nutrition and sleep needs. You'll learn about how parents, healthcare providers, and caregivers can best protect and advocate for healthy childhood development and set the stage for future health. Physical and neurodevelopmental growth. Physical development during early childhood continues to be directed by biological factors. However, opportunities and experiences yield many differences among children. For example, nutrition and sleep contribute to individual variations, even within one household. And group differences can occur when populations of children have different access to resources such as fresh food, physical proportions, and height. In the United States, on average, children gain between 2 and 3 inches, approximately 5 to 7.5 centimeters, in height and 4 to 5 pounds, approximately 1.8 to 2.25 kilograms, in weight per year between ages 3 and 6. Medline Plus, 2022, Figure 5.2. A key change during this period is the development of more adult-like body proportions. The head accounts for a steadily decreasing proportion of body length throughout the childhood years. Recall the cephalocaudal principle. Legs grow proportionally longer, allowing children to become more mobile, more agile, and better able to balance and coordinate their movements. While 3-year-olds tend to have cylindrical body shapes, with little definition between the waist and hips, the average 6-year-old has a more hourglass-like shape. This change will eventually become more marked for girls, who will develop wider hips and narrower waists at puberty. At 6 years of age, the average child in the United States is 45 inches tall, approximately 115 centimeters, and weighs 45 pounds, approximately 20.4 kilograms. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, 2023. Evidence indicates that the full height potential of our genetic inheritance is affected by several environmental influences. Economic disadvantage, physical neglect, disease, and malnutrition can affect biological and epigenetic mechanisms associated with height, which can take several generations to return to the normal range. Bogan, 2013, Lang et al., 2019, Simeoni and Alberti, 2014. These influences may partly explain generational variations in height. One directly observable consequence of malnutrition is stunting or impaired growth in height. Figure 5.3. Stunting, which cannot be reversed and can increase risks for cognitive and physical damage, has become a global concern. DeSanctis et al., 2021, Buddha et al., 2020. Particularly in war-torn, severely impoverished, and drought-stricken areas, inadequate nutrition is widespread, and stunting is an inherent risk. As a result, an estimated 149 million children under 5, or more than 20% of the global under 5 population, undergo stunting. In some poor parts of Africa and Southern Asia, the proportion rises to nearly half. UNICEF, World Health Organization, WHO, World Bank Group, 2021. In contrast, when children receive sufficient nutrition, Height differences are largely dictated by genetic and ethnicity factors. For example, genetic contributions to height are similar across geographic regions, and children descended from the geographic cultural region of Europe tend to be taller than children descended from the geographic cultural region of East Asia, regardless of where they live today, illustrating the strong influence of genetics and ethnicity. Jelenkovic et al. 2016.1. Additionally, socioeconomic factors play a role in determining differences in height and weight. Children in high-income countries who receive better nutrition and healthcare grow taller and weigh more than their peers in low- and middle-income countries. Reynolds et al. 2017. Sex differences in growth. During early childhood, boys start becoming taller and heavier on average than girls. Though still relatively minor, differences are more pronounced than in infancy and toddlerhood. For example, according to the World Health Organization (WHO), the average healthy 4-year-old boy is about 0.75 inch 2 centimeters taller and about 2 pounds 1 kilogram heavier than the average healthy girl. At this age, girls are already developing more fatty tissue and boys have comparatively more muscle. McCarthy et al. 2014. This variation is partly due to differences in hormone production between the sexes and are probably genetically programmed. Even in the first few months of life, male and female infants appear to store fat differently, perhaps due to different levels of hormone production. Davis et al. 2019. However, sex-related growth changes in early childhood may also be influenced by external factors like diet and exercise. Regardless of how they originate, these developmental differences become more apparent in large motor activities, which we'll discuss in 5.2 Motor Development and Physical Skills in Early Childhood. In early childhood, however, physical differences that may exist between boys and girls do not have any major practical applications. In any case, the variance within each sex is much larger than that between the sexes. That is, height and weight vary widely among all boys and among all girls, but the average difference between boys and girls is very small. What are considered normal heights and weights for both boys and girls also varies. As always, group averages mask large individual differences, and individual variation is normal. Neurodevelopmental growth. The brain both orchestrates and complements the growth of the body. That is, neural growth allows the development and expansion of new competencies, and as experience and practice with competencies increase, the brain responds by growing new connections. This process occurs throughout the lifespan, but is particularly pronounced in early childhood. By the age of 6, a child's body weight is only about 30% of the average normal adult weight, but the brain has reached 90% of its adult size. Stiles and Jernigan 2010. Figure 5.4. The increased mass is accounted for by the growth of axons, dendrites, and synaptic connections that allow for more complex neural and motor processing. A more substantial proportion of the increased brain weight is attributable to increased myelination. This development allows for faster and more coordinated activity as well as advances in learning and memory. Chevalier et al. 2015. Dioni et al. 2016. Gilmore et al. 2018. For the most part, maturation dictates the timing of myelination and brain development. Recall from 3.1 Physical Development in Infants and Toddlers that myelination is the process of wrapping axons in myelin to speed neural transmissions. The myelination of neurons that are essential to early physical development is mostly complete by 40 months of age. However, when life experiences are limited or the environment is highly stressful, myelination and overall brain growth will be slowed. From an early age, the amount of stimulation a child receives has a significant effect on brain structure, weight, and volume. Gilmore et al. 2018. Lawson 2013. Ziegler et al. 2020. Poor nutrition may also lead to deficits in myelin development and a general decrease in brain mass. However, the brain remains quite plastic in early childhood, and early intervention can often reverse these negative effects. DeFatia et al. 2019. The brain continues to overproduce dendrites and synapses, which then leads to additional synaptic pruning. This alone tells us that brain plasticity remains strong, and that experiences and opportunities have roles in development. A cross-sectional study with participants ranging in age from newborn to 91 years found that the density of dendrites among children in early childhood was 2 to 3 times that of the average adult. Patanjek et al. 2011. This indicates that a wealth of growth and learning are unfolding in early childhood, particularly for children in environments rich with learning and play experiences. Growth patterns include experience-expectant processes, which are universal and occur in all individuals as part of typical development. They include the brains being ready to receive and process sensory input, such as vision and language, during critical periods of development. In contrast, experience-dependent processes rely on the brain's ability to adapt and rewire in response to specific, individual experiences, such as learning a new language or a musical instrument. These experiences are unique to each person and are influenced by the person's environment, learning opportunities, and social interactions. Thus, the brain appears programmed to expand. The process of overproduction and pruning of synapses probably doesn't stop until the third decade of life, especially in the prefrontal cortex, Kolk and Rakich, 2022. That the brain continually reorganizes itself tells us that a person's environment has a persistent influence on outcomes. For instance, the onset of some neuropsychiatric disorders, like schizophrenia, may result from still unidentified environmental factors acting on genetic information. Psychologists already know that environmental factors are associated with some areas of brain development. For instance, low socioeconomic status and poor nutrition are linked to less brain growth and less activation of specific brain regions. These findings likely have implications for school readiness, higher-order thinking, memory, and self-regulation. Hung et al., 2023. Moriguchi and Shinohara, 2019. Tomasi and Volkow, 2021. In another example, parents who respond with greater compassion and use fewer harsh tones exhibit the warmth and sensitivity associated with the development of more advanced brain networks in children. Souffrant et al., 2022. It's also likely that overarching factors, like overall intellectual stimulation, reduced levels of stress, and better nutrition, account for a proportion of the differences in brain development. Copeland et al., 2021. Coppola, Sibley et al., 2020. Richmond et al., 2022. Lateralization and handedness. Most people process input from the right side of the body in the left hemisphere of their brain, and vice versa. As you may recall from 3.1 Physical Development in Infants and Toddlers, this organizational characteristic of the brain is known as lateralization. The left hemisphere typically handles language-related tasks such as reading, speaking, and thinking, while the right hemisphere specializes in emotional expression, musical ability, and recognition of visual spatial relationships used in geometry, art, and navigation. Lateralization begins at birth. The hemispheres are independent, and they work together to process experiences and respond. For example, oral communication, a function of the left hemisphere, also relies on right hemisphere functions, such as visualization. Therefore, there is no such thing as being left-brained or right-brained. Handedness is another example of lateralization in action. About 10% of children across cultures and continents prefer to use their left hand, a preference linked to differences in brain organization and genes. Whereas about 95% of right-handed people show typical lateralization patterns, like language centers in the left hemisphere, only about 75% of left-handers do. De Koval et al., 2019. Though some studies indicate that most children develop an obvious hand preference by 6 months of age, others find that stable preferences may not appear until age 9 or even later. Sharoon and Bryden, 2014. However, by that time, most children have already been required to favor one hand over another in school tasks like coloring, writing, and using a mouse. Differences in cognition, artistic expression, and athletic prowess between left-handed and right-handed children are often reported. However, no scientific evidence suggests that these differences exist. McManus, 2019. Nonetheless, children who are left-hand dominant often struggle with products designed for right-handers, such as scissors, seat belts, and school desks. Though we can learn to use our non-dominant hand quite well, hand dominance appears to be highly heritable and unchangeable. Even identical twins, who share the same genes, may favor different hands. Each has the same 10% chance of being left-handed. This indicates that handedness results from a combination of environmental and genetic influences. Schmitz et al., 2017. Nutrition and eating habits. Nutritional needs are relatively stable from early childhood until puberty. Savarino et al., 2021. All children need a balanced diet. Figure 5.5. This includes nutrient-rich foods containing a variety of the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats needed for energy and optimal health. Macronutrients. The body requires carbohydrates, proteins, and fats in large amounts. These groupings are commonly known as macronutrients. They play a vital role in the growth and development of preschool children. Carbohydrates are the body's primary source of energy. Preschool children need them to fuel their high level of activity and support their growing brains. And those who do not get enough may feel tired and weak. Good sources of carbohydrates include fresh fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. These foods also provide the fiber, vitamins, and minerals essential to maintain health. Proteins are important for building and repairing tissues in the body. Preschool children need proteins for growth and development and for maintaining a healthy immune system. Without sufficient protein, children are at higher risk for infections. Fan et al., 2022. Good sources of animal-based proteins include lean meats, fish, eggs, and dairy products, such as cheese and yogurt. There are many good plant-based protein sources as well, like soy, for example, tofu, legumes like peas and beans, and nuts. Fats are another important macronutrient preschool children need to maintain energy and growth and to better absorb vitamins and minerals. Low intake of healthy fats can affect brain development and is associated with behavioral and learning problems. Kianese et al., 2018. Sources of healthy fats include nuts, seeds, avocados, and fatty fish like salmon. On the other hand, it's important to limit saturated fat intake. Saturated fats are found in animal meat products and rich dairy, including butter, cream, and mini cheeses. Stricter government regulations have reduced the number of food items with trans fats, but these substances are still common in processed snacks like crackers and cookies, frozen desserts, and fried foods of all kinds. Trans fats and saturated fats are associated with an increased lifetime risk of heart disease and other health problems. Houston, 2018. Pipoyan et al., 2021. Healthy habits. Parents and caregivers often worry about how much their children are eating, rather than considering what they are eating. Children are quite good at regulating their own nutritional habits if given a chance. Serving less nutritious food, like the children's meals at many restaurants, because it is easier to get children to eat them, generally leads to poor habits. Children who consume a lot of high-fat, sweet, and salty foods may fail to acquire a taste for other flavors. In contrast, adults who model positive eating habits, gently encourage children to try new foods, and avoid arguments over meals have a positive impact on children's eating behavior. Figure 5.6. In short, children who are introduced to healthy vegetables and proteins on a regular basis will grow accustomed to them. Cardona-Cano et al., 2015. Mahmoud et al., 2021. Maza et al., 2022. Nikitsing et al., 2018. Life hacks. Preschool dinner time. We want children to be healthy and to develop good eating habits. Yet many parents and caregivers insist that children, quote, finish what's on their plate before leaving the table or having dessert. This message supports the idea that children shouldn't listen to their own bodies when they are full, and that they should necessarily overeat. If children decide they're no longer hungry or don't want a particular item that they usually didn't choose anyway, that is normally okay. Children are quite good at regulating their own eating habits if offered healthy choices and allowed to consume the amount that feels right to them. Dinner time is a perfect opportunity to provide a variety of healthy options and allow children to choose the right amount to eat. Many caregivers become anxious that children will starve if they don't immediately begin to eat what is served. Instead, adults should be patient and calm to avoid making meals into a power struggle. Consider these tips. Don't get frustrated. If children elect not to try the lentils or cantaloupe one night, it doesn't mean they'll never enjoy them. Avoid providing alternatives like pizza and fried chicken. These are fine to consume in moderation, but they reinforce picky eating when they become a frequent substitute for less processed options. Speak in a matter-of-fact tone. That's fine. If you don't want the green beans tonight, you can eat more carrots instead. Enjoy your own healthy meals. If children observe others taking pleasure in a variety of foods, they'll eventually try other options themselves, especially if they aren't offered less healthy alternatives. Be aware of food allergies or intolerances. If a particular food, like dairy products or nuts, consistently causes distress, it might indicate a health issue that is best addressed with a physician. A significant proportion of U.S. children and families live in a food desert, a geographic area where fresh food is not readily available. Figure 5.7. These usually lower-income, inner-city, or rural areas spark a dependence on unhealthy fast food or frozen prepared food. Residents may therefore rely on the limited offerings of nearby convenience stores or travel long distances for their meals, which can be costly and incur further financial strain. Limited access to affordable and nutritious food can lead to a variety of health problems, including obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Ziso et al., 2022. Efforts to increase access to healthy foods include tax incentives to build supermarkets, host farmers markets, and develop community gardens in underserved areas. Addressing food deserts is an important step in promoting food equity and improving public health outcomes, particularly for vulnerable populations like those who are impoverished or have food allergies that further restrict food choices. Healthy sleep. Early childhood is a critical time to establish healthy sleep habits. Young children need a significant amount of sleep, as well as caring adults to support them with sleep issues. Figure 5.8. Sleep duration. According to the WHO, preschool children typically need 10 to 13 hours of sleep every 24 hours and to maintain consistent sleep and wake times. Children who have stopped napping sleep more at night, getting the same amount of sleep overall as their peers who nap. Ward et al., 2008, WHO, 2019. Though evidence is limited, studies indicate that getting fewer than 10 hours of sleep per night during early childhood is associated with a higher risk of accidents and hypertension, and a lower quality of life later. However, it's difficult to know whether those associations are due to poor sleep habits or to family and environmental variables, like a household that is less consistent about children's sleep habits, nutrition, and activity levels. A combination of factors may be responsible for poorer outcomes among children who sleep less than 10 hours per night. Peruthi et al., 2016. Sprout, 2019. Substantial evidence associates less than optimal sleep with unhealthy weight gain and obesity. These outcomes are likely due to changes in appetite, including excessive snacking and increased calorie consumption, and the way the body metabolizes energy. Papatriantafilou et al., 2022. Sleep problems. Sleep problems are not uncommon in young children and can manifest in many ways. Fear of the dark and of being left alone can make it difficult to fall asleep or cause children to wake during the night. Parenting blogs and social media sites commonly report that up to half of children aged 3 to 6 have bad dreams at least once per week, but the prevalence is probably much lower, perhaps as low as 13%. Samard et al., 2008. Between 1% and 6.5% of children experience night terrors, or sleep terrors, which appear to peak between ages 5 and 7. Unlike dreams, which occur during REM sleep, night terrors occur during deep sleep and initiate intense fear or terror. Children may suddenly sit up, scream and thrash, and appear to be in a state of panic or terror, sweating and having a rapid heart rate. In this state, they aren't fully awake and aren't easily comforted. They may not even respond to their parents or caregivers. Liang et al., 2020. While the exact cause of night terrors is unknown, treatment usually consists of reassuring the child and keeping them safe during an episode. Children should not be forced to wake up. However, it is often effective to briefly wake them 30 minutes before the time terrors usually begin, typically during the first third of the night, and determine whether that intervention makes a difference. Medication and other treatments are not generally indicated, and most children grow out of night terrors by early adolescence. Liang et al., 2020. Van Horn and Street, 2022. Most also have no memory of the night terror when they awake. Early childhood health risks and protective factors. In addition to sufficient sleep and proper nutrition, young children need regular medical checkups and vaccinations. Regular checkups help ensure that children are growing and developing properly and can screen for early health problems. Children also need adults to provide safe environments. Vaccination. The use of childhood vaccines in countries with high rates of national immunization coverage is responsible for the near elimination of serious diseases such as polio and measles. Because there are no cures for these ailments, vaccinations are the best defense against severe illness and mortality. Figure 5.9. Vaccines commonly administered in the United States protect against measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis B, polio, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, whooping cough. Although children continue to get vaccines until their second birthday, after which they receive mostly booster shots, there is no evidence they overburden the immune system. Glanz et al., 2018, Gregson and Edelman, 2003, Nicoli and Apey, 2017, as some people fear. Many public schools require vaccinations for entry, and the CDC and other health organizations provide recommended vaccination schedules, as well as catch-up schedules, if a child has fallen behind or otherwise needs an alternative schedule. Another unfounded concern that vaccinations are linked to the occurrence of developmental disorders became popular in 1998 when British physician Andrew Wakefield and his colleagues published a now-retracted study in the scientific journal The Lancet. Without proper evidence, Wakefield suggested the MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, Vaccine predisposed children to autism, as the disorder was then called. Wakefield et al., 1998. The report received wide media attention despite its limitations, including having a sample size of only 12, a poor design, and merely speculative conclusions. As a result, MMR vaccination rates declined significantly. Mata and Stecula, 2021, Rao and Andrade, 2011. The British Medical Journal later published a series of articles outlining fraudulent behavior among the research team and accusing Wakefield of knowingly publishing false information. Godley et al., 2011. Kmitovich, 2010. Wakefield was stripped of his medical license for misconduct, dishonesty, and unethical behavior. Nevertheless, his baseless influence affects vaccination rates decades later as widespread distrust of vaccines remains, despite their proven safety. Beres et al., 2023, Nuwarda et al., 2022. Globally, immunization among children under 5 years old decreased from 86% in 2000 to 83% in 2023. Although the measles vaccine is widely available and inexpensive, limited distribution still exists in countries with low per capita incomes or weak or disrupted healthcare infrastructures. In 2022, 136,000 deaths were attributed to measles, primarily among children under age 5, WHO 2024. Nevertheless, this vaccine has reduced the global death rate of measles by more than 83% since widespread use began. WHO 2023. In the United States, the measles vaccine gained widespread distribution beginning in the 1960s, contributing to a decline in cases from about 750,000 a year to fewer than 200 annually by 2024, CDC 2024. Probably due to persistent misinformation, measles cases rose as high as 1,274 in 2019, before dropping again during the COVID-19 pandemic when children were isolated from one another. The WHO has recently rolled out its late-stage trial of a malaria vaccine, UNICEF 2023, to combat one of the leading causes of childhood deaths globally: illness, unintentional injury, and mortality. Globally, 15% of deaths among children under 5 are caused by diarrheal diseases. Unsanitary conditions and lack of access to safe drinking water are contributing factors. Often, simply drinking liquids to avoid dehydration will prevent death. However, of children who contract diarrheal diseases, fewer than half have access to clean drinking water. UNICEF 2023. Along with diarrheal diseases, malnutrition and malaria remain leading causes of death in children under 5, though they are virtually non-existent in wealthy countries. Many high-income countries have seen a strong decline in childhood death from diarrheal disease, largely thanks to better prevention science and rapid treatment. Santosham et al., 2019. In the United States, deaths from diarrheal diseases accounted for fewer than 0.1% of deaths in children younger than 5, CDC 2022. After age 1, unintentional injuries, accidents, become the leading cause of premature death in childhood. Despite continued improvements in safety standards for motor vehicles and consumer products, the overall decline in accidental deaths has stagnated. There are also persistent racial and ethnic differences in accident rates, CDC 2022, almost certainly due to socioeconomic disparities between minorities and those who are more advantaged. Socioeconomic status, SES, plays a role in injuries related to fires, drownings, and falls, likely due to limited financial resources and education, less supervision, and lack of safe play areas. Low SES is also linked to higher rates of accidents and deaths related to burns, fires, drownings, and poisonings outside the United States. Mahbub et al., 2021. Moshiro et al., 2021. Tyler et al., 2017. Ensuring safety and preventing homicides in both elementary and secondary schools has become an increasingly pressing matter in the United States. Homicide is currently one of the leading causes of death for children across age ranges, the fourth leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4, the fifth leading cause of death for children in elementary and middle school, and the third leading cause of death for high school-aged teens. National Center for Health Statistics 2021. Between January 2009 and May 2018, there were 389 reported school shootings in the United States, compared to fewer than 40 in all other countries combined. CNN 2018. Cox et al. 2024. Despite this alarming trend, there have been no widespread efforts to restrict the availability of firearms since the Columbine High School shooting in 1999. Many schools have implemented emergency plans and procedures for responding to threats, increased the use of physical barriers and security measures, and established partnerships with law enforcement and mental health providers. Dangers to children and adolescents in other parts of the world are very different. In some regions of Africa and Asia, such as Yemen and the Central African Republic, where political instability remains pervasive, military regimes abduct and enslave children for use in armed conflict. Human Rights Watch 2023, United Nations UN 2023. In other countries, such as South Sudan and Afghanistan, both government and opposition forces use residential areas, schools, and students as shields, posing significant threats and making children prime targets of violence. Some progress in protecting children has been made by the UN's Children, Not Soldiers campaign, launched in 2014, UN 2023. Every place is Sumin's potential playground. She uses sofas and pillows to build caves, imagines being a wild bear, and launches toys into space. She is drawn to movement, spending her days running, jumping, climbing, clapping, twisting, and spinning. She plays with balls and has spontaneous dance parties. And it's not a coincidence that many of her favorite preschool songs celebrate and encourage movement, including The Wheels on the Bus, The Itsy Bitsy Spider, and The Hokey Pokey, to name a few. In this section, you'll learn about norms for motor development, as well as individual differences in movement during early childhood. Psychologists study this period by dividing motor activity into large and small body movements, gross and fine motor skills. As you learned in 5.1 Physical Health and Growth in Early Childhood, environmental experiences and brain growth are complementary influences. Activities that initiate myelin formation and myelin formation itself are reciprocal developments that both improve motor skills. Depending on whether there is freedom or restriction, experiences in movement can have a significant impact on a child's physical development. Ozal et al. 2020. Gross and fine motor skills and developmental milestones. As children develop during early childhood, they become more proficient at running, catching and throwing a ball, using crayons, and manipulating devices like phones or computers with their hands and fingers. These activities are important milestones in motor movement development. Achieving physical milestones also means the brain is developing as predicted. When milestones are significantly delayed, it indicates a potential problem in development, and appropriate interventions can be designed to address it. During this period, children transition from somewhat lumbering, awkward behaviors to more adult-like motor movement. Through early childhood, they will meet common motor skill milestones that gradually improve their physical abilities, including their hand-eye coordination, reaction time, and overall strength. Table 5.1. By the time children arrive at middle childhood, they will have developed the general capabilities to perform movements like those of adults, though with far less skill and strength. Figure 5.10. However, due to their relatively immature cognitive abilities and still developing brains, children don't yet fully grasp certain aspects of motion, such as the trajectory of a rolling ball in a game of soccer or kickball. For these reasons, younger children are usually offered accommodations when engaging in physical activities. For instance, their slower reaction time and lack of skill necessitates the use of equipment like training wheels on a bicycle or a batting tee in t-ball. As you learned in 3.2 Motor Development in Infants and Toddlers, large body movements of the head, torso, arms, and legs are gross motor skills. We use gross motor skills in everyday activities like getting out of bed, stepping into clothes, and participating in nearly all athletic activities. In contrast, fine motor skills enable more precise movements of the hands and fingers. Among those who are sighted, fine motor skills often coordinate with vision. We use fine motor skills when clipping nails, holding a pencil to draw, using a video game controller, and holding an eating utensil. Similar to general physical growth, motor behavior changes depending on experience. For instance, having opportunities to play with blocks or participate in recreational sports provide advantages in particular kinds of movements. Sometimes children struggle to perform typical movements, a condition called dyspraxia or developmental coordination disorder, Odia et al. 2021. This neurodevelopmental condition often emerges in early childhood and impairs a child's ability to plan and execute coordinated movements, like tying shoelaces, buttoning clothes, or holding a pencil properly. Children with the disorder may also have difficulty with gross motor skills, such as riding a bike or dribbling a ball. Early intervention can help improve motor skills and boost a child's self-esteem and future development. Eggleston et al. 2020, Zwicker and Lee 2021. The importance of physicality and movement. It's well established that early physical activity has a positive impact on later health outcomes. Pate et al. 2019, Roy Chowdhury 2020, Bishinska et al. 2020, including weight and cardiovascular fitness. It is also linked to lower risks of chronic diseases, like diabetes, hypertension, and certain cancers. Moreover, children who engage in physical activity during early childhood have higher bone density, which may help prevent osteoporosis in later life. Pate et al. 2019. Like their older counterparts, active children also have stronger cognitive development, including improved attention, self-regulation, and academic performance. Mualem et al. 2018, Wood et al. 2020. Substantial evidence shows that throughout the lifespan, regular physical activity leads to better overall cognitive development. Erickson et al. 2019. Even a single 30-minute session has been shown to be beneficial in improving motor activity and memory for preschool children. McDonnell et al. 2013. One recent study suggested that these improvements are traceable to the cellular level in the brain, finding sustained brain excitability after one 30-minute aerobic activity. Kuo et al. 2023. Physical activity also has positive influences on later mental health, with reduced levels of depression, anxiety, and stress reported in physically active children, including those with ADHD. Christensen et al. 2019. Rodriguez-Ayon et al. 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to 2023 closed schools and community centers in many countries, depriving children of the benefits of physical activity due to organized sports and recreation being restricted or unavailable. These limitations mirrored the challenges individuals already faced in low-income communities, where areas may be unsafe for families to walk or bicycle, and where access to amenities like affordable sports facilities and open spaces are typically scarce, perpetuating health and other inequalities. The pandemic underscored the significance of providing equal opportunities for children of all ages, genders, incomes, ethnicities, and physical abilities to engage in physical activity regularly. Du et al. 2022. Richard et al. 2023. Movement guidelines. According to the WHO, 3 and 4-year-old children should spend a minimum of 3 hours per day engaged in a variety of physical activities, including at least 60 minutes of moderate intensity to promote overall healthy development. WHO 2022. Moderately intense activities include walking a dog, dancing, and riding a tricycle. In addition, the WHO recommends that children not be restrained in a stroller for more than an hour at a time or sit for extended periods. Figure 5.11. Children who are 5 and 6 years old are typically in school. The WHO recommends that they participate in a minimum of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per day. This can include normal school recess activities like climbing and playing games with balls. At least 3 times per week, children this age should engage in more vigorous aerobic activity, like games of tag, soccer, or basketball. High-intensity physical activities are especially important for building bone strength and muscle development. Gunter et al. 2012. Specker et al. 2015. All young children should also have limits on screen time and sedentary behavior. However, modeling good habits can be difficult for parents and caregivers, and limiting sedentary behavior can be particularly challenging in some daycare settings and low-income communities, where space to play may be less accessible. Individual differences in motor behavior. Children with physical disabilities need physical activity as much as their peers. However, unequal facilities such as playgrounds lacking specialized equipment can pose structural barriers for these children. In addition, some sex differences are present in motor development. Children with physical disabilities. Public policy decisions typically give less consideration to preschool children with physical disabilities. Heath and Levine, 2022. Their caregivers must therefore become expert coaches and activists, adding to family stress. Delvert et al. 2022. Barriers can include facilities that are inaccessible to wheelchairs, climbing bars that are too high to reach, and a lack of adapted equipment. Attitudinal barriers, such as negative stereotypes and misconceptions about children's capabilities, are additional challenges, but it is essential to promote physical activity nevertheless. Figure 5.12. Children with different abilities or disabilities gain the same benefits from physical activity as other children, including improved cardiovascular health, strength, balance, coordination, and mood. Lasma and Rachman, 2019. Shu et al. 2020. Physical activity also improves social skills, self-esteem, and mental health for children with disabilities, often leading to higher educational achievement. Al-Humaid and Saeed, 2023. Blumen, et al., 2015. Expanding teacher training to include appropriate special education activities is a good start. Simply increasing knowledge about various disabilities allows schools to promote equity, inclusivity, and diversity. Just as we acknowledge that some children can more easily sit for long periods, we need to recognize that some children need additional time for activity. Sex differences in motor behavior. Evidence suggests that physical differences exist between males and females even at early ages, due to physiological and maturational differences. Cookstein et al., 2017, Pellegrini and Smith, 1998. Studies show that females' fine motor skills and manual dexterity are better than males, beginning at about 2 years of age. These advantages gradually diminish through the early childhood years until they disappear. Navarro-Patone et al., 2021. In contrast, boys tend to outperform girls in specific gross motor skills, like catching a ball, that require speed or object manipulation. On average, boys jump higher and run faster than girls beginning in early childhood, likely because of differences in muscle strength. However, girls show better balancing skills on average, such as when walking on a beam, balancing on one foot, and playing hopscotch. Therefore, some research argues that when all large motor activities are considered, overall differences disappear. Cookstein et al., 2017. However, it is not known how much time boys and girls spent on balancing activities before they were measured in these studies. Navarro-Patone et al., 2021, Pear et al., 2019. Furthermore, differences that do exist appear to ebb and flow throughout the preschool period, depending on exact age and sex. Because preschool children are so young, just a few months can have a large impact when measuring one group against another. Biological evidence points to small differences between male and female infant brains that may influence motor behavior. For example, males have higher motor and physical activity levels than females. Eaton and Yu, 1989. Uller et al., 2020. Pellegrini and Smith, 1998. Raza et al., 2019. Wurabe, 2014. These findings might explain differences in motor behavior. However, studies also show that male infants are conditioned to be more physically active than female infants. On average, adults treat girls more delicately and use softer language beginning right after birth and continuing throughout infancy. Beal, 1994. Johnson et al., 2014. Parents are more likely to engage in rough-and-tumble play with boys, in contrast to quiet play activities such as reading and cuddling when engaging with girls. Storley, 2021. This behavior suggests boys are given more opportunity to develop motor skills. Therefore, differences between boys and girls may be due to learning and reinforcement. That is, perhaps boys are given more opportunities to practice motor skills, providing a foundation for added strength. Finally, recall the distinction between within-group and between-group differences. Discovering the reasons behind small differences in motor abilities provides insight for developmental scientists. For example, it helps us to understand the full range of development and to design interventions when problems arise. Regardless of individual or group differences, all children should be offered equal opportunities and encouragement. Life hacks. Keeping children active. We know that during early childhood, parents and caregivers should encourage activities and play that emphasize motor skills and combat sedentary behavior and habits. After all, the brain literally grows when children engage in new opportunities. But if you're wondering when you'll find time in your day to play catch with your kids, consider that while children need to move, not all motor behaviors are related to athletic activities. In fact, you can turn everyday adult tasks like shopping and cooking into engaging activities that encourage movement and promote skill building and foster independence. Children enjoy placing produce in a bag, lifting sacks of flour, and loading and unloading items from a shopping cart. They also develop fine motor skills when they pour water, measure ingredients, and use utensils of all kinds. Including young children in these activities does take planning and patience. It's tempting to run to the grocery store while another adult minds the child, or to rush through meal preparation while the child is occupied with electronic devices. However, try including children in these tasks as much as possible. With time and practice, they will become increasingly proficient, improving their motor skills, building a habit of keeping active, learning responsibility, and perhaps eventually even saving you time. And one day, they may even cook dinner for the family. Renee enjoys their work as a preschool teacher, even on the rough days with tantrums, spilled paint, and bathroom accidents. Renee knows their day-to-day work allows them to witness something extraordinary. During early childhood, the students' brains will grow, facilitating an expansion of cognitive abilities. By the time these students transition to middle childhood and early elementary school, they'll be solving increasingly complex cognitive tasks, including jigsaw puzzles, math calculations, and negotiations to acquire a family pet. In this section, you'll learn about the cognitive milestones expected in early childhood through the lens of various cognitive theories that have had a significant influence on how psychologists view this growth and development. Scientists, scholars, and practitioners use these theoretical lenses as a foundation to understand how children acquire natural skills like language, as well as those that are more culturally nuanced, like learning to be independent versus relying on the guidance of others. Cognitive influences and milestones. The developmental patterns observed in young children can help us find new ways to improve cognition and choose early intervention strategies when we observe cognitive deficits. At 3 years of age, children exhibit a wide range of skill levels. Some speak little, and their communication is relatively difficult to understand, whereas others articulate well enough to carry on long conversations with a stranger. Most children who are exposed to math concepts can do basic addition before they turn 4, but others will not count to 10 until well after entering kindergarten at age 5 or 6. In addition, environmental and epigenetic factors can have a profound effect on the way each person develops. For instance, malnutrition during early childhood can lead to impaired neurodevelopment and cognition, which are associated with deficits in academic achievement. Kyrillos et al., 2022. Even an influence that appears unrelated, like emotional deprivation, is associated with changes in the structure of the brain that may lead to impaired cognitive abilities. Sheridan et al., 2022. When considering positive impacts on development, we know that simply talking more to infants and toddlers has a potentially profound influence on their later language use and cognition. In a study that continues to provoke discussion, Hart and Risley, 1995, monitored and recorded the number of words that high, middle, and low-income parents used when interacting with their children over a 2-year period. They found that, on average, high-income parents used twice as many words per hour as their low- and middle-income counterparts, resulting in their children hearing approximately 30 million more words by the age of 4. This increase in exposure to language positively correlated with a significantly larger vocabulary in the children who heard more words. Other research has questioned the methodology of Hart and Risley's original work and suggested that 30 million words might be an overestimate, finding instead that differences in language by SES may be less about a word gap and more about hearing child-directed speech. Daly and Bergelson, 2021. Ultimately, parents' income shouldn't be considered the deciding factor. Rather, it seems that children with higher language skills have likely heard more words and been spoken to with child-directed speech more often. That is, language exposure, not income, is the strongest predictor of later language skills. Research continues to show a positive association between home literacy and cognition across age, gender, and income. Hutton et al., 2020, Tompkins, 2022. These results reinforce that, though typical developmental milestones are a guide, they represent only one avenue of growth, and typical can have several meanings depending on the population considered. Just as a physical milestone like standing leads to walking, then running, then skipping, cognitive tasks show stepped gains in sophistication. Younger children begin counting, then perform addition, then understand more complex math operations. Caregivers and professionals use these types of milestones to ensure expected cognitive growth is occurring as expected. Table 5.2. Stage theory of cognitive development. While it is important to identify typical cognitive milestones, if we want to help children develop, we also need to understand how they grow and achieve these milestones. As noted in 3.4 Cognition and Memory in Infants and Toddlers, Jean Piaget suggested that the maturation of thought and cognition is the result of an interaction between the developing brain and experiences in the world. Recall that children actively construct their understanding of the world throughout the childhood years via the processes of assimilation and accommodation. When information fits into existing schemas, it is assimilated. When a new way of thinking is necessary, the information is accommodated. These processes take on different forms as cognition matures. The sensory-motor stage. During the earlier sensory-motor stage in Piaget's theory of cognitive development, infants shift focus from their own bodies to the world around them. Initially, they lack internal representations of people, objects, or events. But by the end of this stage, they have gained a range of skills in internal representation and the ability to act on those representations. These cognitive advancements mark the transition to Piaget's second stage of cognitive development, the pre-operational stage, thought to occur from around age 2 to around age 7. It is called pre-operational because it is characterized by lack of the logical and reversible mental actions known as operations. When we perform mental arithmetic, for example, we are performing an operation because we are using mental representation such as remembering, comparing, or evaluating. A post-operational child older than 7 can mentally imagine 3 doubled, or how many players remain on a 7-person team if one leaves, and compare these to understand that both equal 6. Pre-operational children show remarkable progress in mental representation, demonstrated by their ability to engage in imaginative play. Figure 5.13. They start to represent their thoughts and ideas using symbols, such as words and images. This is called symbolic representation and enables children to better understand the world around them. They play act, try different roles, and experiment with social interactions. They may use a crayon to represent a rocket blasting off, or imagine a row of stuffed animals to be students in a pretend classroom. Thanks to rapid growth of language skills, they can represent images and actions that exist only in the imagination, like directing an ocean full of whales while sitting on a cardboard hovercraft. Through language and symbolic representation, children learn to think in more sophisticated ways. Piaget used specific terminology to mark these changes, including egocentrism and centration. Egocentrism. According to Piaget, pre-operational children have limited logical reasoning abilities because they tend to perceive things from only their current and individual perspective and experience. Thus, they find it challenging to differentiate their own thoughts and ideas from those of others, a phenomenon he called egocentrism. Children may assume others share their perspectives and thoughts, and they can find it amusing to crash toys or bang kitchen utensils, for example, because they may not be aware the noise can disturb others. When out at night, a pre-operational child might observe that the moon is following me when it seems to move with them. This sense of animism, the belief that objects are alive and possess consciousness, is another egocentric feature. Children may treat inanimate objects as if they have emotions and thoughts, just like themselves. For example, a child may talk to a teddy bear as if it were a living being with feelings. Figure 5.14. A car that needs repair might not feel well. A child who is hurt while riding a tricycle or playing with blocks may want to punish the objects because they believe the objects acted intentionally to cause harm. Following Piaget, several theorists in cognitive psychology and overlapping psychology fields have expanded the understanding of egocentrism and perspective taking. Two important contributions providing further insight into egocentrism are theory of mind and the false belief task. The theory of mind is our awareness that our own beliefs and perspectives are different from those of others. This develops in humans and some animals, such as chimpanzees, at various rates. Premack and Woodruff, 1978. Baron Cohen et al., 1985. A false belief occurs when children too young to possess a theory of mind assume that other people have the same knowledge they possess. Arendt, 2015. In the classic false belief task experiment, a child observes an individual hiding a toy in one location and then leaving the room. Wimmer and Perner, 1983. After watching a different individual move the toy to another location, the child is asked where the first person would look for the toy. Children who have developed a theory of mind understand that the first person will look in the original location. Younger children, often still in the pre-operational stage, typically say the person will look for the toy in the location to which it was moved. They assume the first person's beliefs are the same as their own. Figure 5.15. At the end of the pre-operational stage, children develop the ability to better perceive the perspectives of others, including understanding that others can have different beliefs from their own. Recent research demonstrates that thinking and the ability to understand different beliefs become more sophisticated in early childhood than Piaget originally believed, and that children indeed understand that other people have thoughts of their own. Zhao et al., 2021. To further study how children understand others, Piaget and Inhelder, 1969, devised an experiment called the Three Mountains task to determine when children begin to decenter. Pay attention to multiple points of view. In this setting, the researchers showed children a group of plaster mountains and place a doll on a side of the platform opposite to where the child is seated. The child is then shown a series of pictures and asked to choose the one that represents the doll's perspective. At the age of 4, children consistently chose the pictures that represented their own viewpoint rather than the doll's. By age 7, however, children were able to correctly identify the doll's view, indicating a decrease in egocentric thinking. The Three Mountains task demonstrates a transition from a stage of limited perspective to one that includes the ability to consider another person's point of view. When children begin to think logically in this way, they are engaging in the concrete operations that represent the third stage of Piaget's theory. Centration. Another hallmark of Piaget's pre-operational stage is the process of centration, in which a child focuses attention on only one characteristic of an object or situation at a time. Piaget demonstrated this tendency in children through tasks that tested conservation, their understanding that changing the appearance of a substance does not alter mass, number, or volume. For instance, in a liquid conservation task, a child is shown 2 identical beakers and asked to confirm that they hold the same amount of liquid. Next, the child is instructed to pour the contents of one beaker into a taller, narrower container. When asked which beaker contains more liquid, pre-operational children tend to select the taller container because their attention is centered on the height of the liquid. Children may also demonstrate a lack of conservation of mass, length, number, and area. A preschooler may be upset if they have only one cookie instead of 2 halves, like their playmate. But breaking the cookie in half so both children appear to have the same amount is likely to bring satisfaction. Information processing theory. The information processing theory views cognitive development as a continuous loop of information processing and storage, as you learned in 3.4 Cognition and Memory in Infants and Toddlers. Individuals initially attend to incoming information, which is then processed and organized so that it can be efficiently stored. Memories are continually compared and evaluated against each another, allowing for systematic retrieval of information. More advanced cognitive skills develop when we store new information, compare it with existing memories, and generate appropriate responses. Information processing includes the interrelated processes of executive function, attention, and memory. These cognitive processes play important roles in helping children learn, problem solve, and adapt to their environment. Recall that executive function includes skills like planning, organizing, decision-making, and impulse control. These also necessitate the use of attention, which is the ability to focus on specific stimuli while ignoring distractions. That is, individuals need to attend to multiple bits of information when they plan, organize, and make decisions. People also need to diminish distractions, a process called inhibitory control, which allows regulation of impulses and focus. These components of information processing begin developing in early childhood when infants have limited attention spans. With time, children become better at sustaining attention as well as shifting efficiently between tasks. In addition, executive function includes actions related to memory development. To process information, our memory systems encode, store, and eventually retrieve the information. In this way, information processing theory explains how memory systems help us retain knowledge, recall past experiences, and build a foundation for cognitive advancement and learning. Another major milestone of memory development in early childhood is the ability to hold an autobiographical memory. Autobiographical memories are long-term memories of individual life experiences and events. Our earliest memories often begin to develop in early childhood and continue to improve through adolescence. Harley and Reese, 1999. Bauer and Larkina, 2017. Development of this type of memory can help children recall past experiences, develop self-knowledge, and shape their growing sense of identity over time. Ross et al., 2020, Habermas, and Reese, 2015. Autobiographical memory can be improved and scaffolded by caregivers. When caregivers engage in past talk conversations, such as helping a child remember a recent family gathering or event, children show improved autobiographical memory, socio-emotional skills, and self-regulation. Levia et al., 2019. Wu and Jobson, 2019. For example, a parent may help a 4-year-old better recall a grandparent who lives far away by asking, "Do you remember when Grandpa visited and we all went to the pumpkin patch? The pumpkins were so bright and we rode in a truck with hay bales." Prompts like this can help children improve their autobiographical memory and better remember Grandpa before his next visit. The continuous nature of cognitive development. The information processing theory builds on foundational theories, including Piaget's cognitive stage theory. It provides a model that acknowledges the maturational changes outlined by Piaget, while also incorporating the modern, expanded view that environmental circumstances and executive functions matter. For example, both theories agree that a 5-year-old child would not be expected to understand advanced algebra. However, they have different views regarding a child's potential to later learn the complexities of math. Piaget theorized that development consisted of step-like, qualitative changes. In information processing theory, the quantity of information is a significant factor in cognitive growth. Although substantial evidence confirms Piaget's theory that the order of stages is fixed, children's progression through them may either be accelerated or delayed. Winstanley, 2023. The social environment, which includes schools and caregivers, also plays an important role. The continuous nature of development, including both qualitative and quantitative changes, is exemplified in nearly everything we learn. For example, our understanding of math is a progression from simply counting to performing elementary arithmetic to tackling more advanced concepts. However, like upgrading a device to a more powerful processor, maturation allows us to think differently about math as we develop, demonstrating the complementary nature of Piaget's stages and information processing. Psychologists can theorize that thinking matures in a similar way during the development of our understanding of oral language, music, biology, and other subject matters. We also update our processing skills by continually observing and imitating the behavior of others. The complementary nature of information processing and learning theories is evident in the way we acquire reading skills. To decode words, we rely on our accumulated knowledge of sounds and meanings. In addition, we are constantly being exposed to new vocabulary, assorted word meanings, and varied sentence structures. Thus, we experience a continual interplay between storage and processing of words, which facilitates our retrieval of previously acquired semantic memories. This cognitive feedback loop allows us to refine and expand our vocabulary, leading to improved reading and comprehension skills. We also grow increasingly proficient at expressing desires and understanding the world, a process that becomes naturally self-reinforcing. Sociocultural theory of cognitive development. You've learned that information processing and learning theories complement the individual experiences described by Piaget. In addition, a more modern view of Piaget acknowledges the role of contextual factors in cognitive development. De Vries, 1997. Social and cultural influences on cognition. Lev Vygotsky's sociocultural theory was the first major cognitive theory to outline the importance of cultural context. Vygotsky, 1978. Unlike Piaget, Vygotsky emphasized the role of social and cultural factors on individual cognitive development. Figure 5.16. For instance, at a very basic level, the importance of social structure is demonstrated by the finding that children who are consistently cared for by the same available, committed adults perform better cognitively than those who are placed in orphanages. Bodekar et al., 2017. And in a classroom setting, children who have collaborative learning opportunities will generally advance more efficiently than those who work only independently. Kratz et al., 2019. However, cultural and societal factors go beyond supervision and peer relationships. They extend to the availability of resources such as books, tutors, mentors, and extra learning opportunities. Think about the ways that children learn to process information differently in varied sociocultural situations, such as living in a nation undergoing a war versus a metropolitan suburb in a country at peace. Young children needing food or supplies in a warring country may have to think of creative ways to cross bridges or navigate open spaces without being seen. Having a constant visual map of their surroundings is necessary for daily survival. In contrast, children in an affluent suburb are likely to develop visual spatial skills using toy building blocks or completing school projects. Groups and environments influence the development of other skills, such as using speech and written language and following social behavior norms, where experiences and access to resources facilitate learning and growth. One pioneering example is known as the hole-in-the-wall experiment that began in 1999 with educational researcher Sugata Mitra's installation of an internet-connected computer learning station in a wall facing a slum in Kalkaji, Delhi, India. Mitra, 2003. This station provided access to a technology learning tool not readily available to children in this disadvantaged community and allowed researchers to observe how children learn in the absence of supervision or direct instruction. Multiple studies that followed have revealed that groups of children can learn by themselves when given access to similar resources. Over the years of implementing and assessing the impact of these learning stations, children using the stations have independently acquired computer and academic skills, as well as improved skills in communication and self-regulation. Mitra, 2003. Mitra and Dangwal, 2017, 2022. The zone of proximal development. A cornerstone of the sociocultural model of learning is that children who initially show less proficiency in a particular activity may not necessarily lack ability. Vygotsky, 1978. Vygotsky emphasized the need to look at a child's learning potential rather than just focusing on tasks that have already been mastered, as standardized tests do. Vygotsky referred to the gap between a child's current knowledge and skills and their further potential for learning as the zone of proximal development, ZPD, Figure 5.17. The ZPD encompasses the activities a child cannot complete alone but can accomplish with the aid of a more skilled adult or peer, often referred to as the more knowledgeable other. Huang, 2021. In school especially, children learn complex tasks with the assistance of a more knowledgeable person, namely their teacher or peers. Figure 5.18. Then, as they become more proficient and develop advanced cognitive abilities, the amount of assistance received from these knowledgeable others gradually decreases. This process of temporary learning support is called scaffolding. Although Vygotsky did not use that term, it has become a fundamental part of social constructivism theory and illustrates the way we transition from collaborative learning to independent learning, observational learning, and pitching in. Another perspective on sociocultural learning was conceptualized by Barbara Rogoff, whose research has shown that children's cognition develops in part when they observe and contribute to ongoing community and home activities. This way of collaborative learning is particularly common in indigenous communities of the Americas. Coppens et al. 2014, Coppens and Rogoff 2022. Rather than isolating children from adult work, these communities emphasize collaboration among members of all ages. Children work alongside others by observing, listening, and taking part, such as contributing to tasks such as household work. Immersed in activities, children can experience the freedom to autonomously construct knowledge and support cultural practices. One of Rogoff's important concepts is pitching in, the practice in which children actively participate in household and community activities from a young age. Figure 5.19. Children explore the world, practice, play, and are guided by community expectations. Others guide them by example, correct their efforts, tell stories, advise, and explain in context. Rogoff calls this multifaceted approach learning by observing and pitching in, LOPI. She contrasts it with assembly line instruction, which she describes as more controlling and isolating and characteristic of most westernized schools. Rogoff et al., 2011. The learning of languages is one area in which researchers can observe these differences. When Amelia started preschool at age 3, she was using more than 500 words and could understand about twice that number. By the time she entered kindergarten at age 5, she recognized well over 10,000 words. In addition, Amelia has been picking up different dialects, slang words, and idioms based on her culture, heard in her neighborhood, and learned from the adults and other children at school. As Amelia's language use advances, it will become a tool for her self-reflection and discovery, complementing her cognitive growth. In this section, you'll learn about the fundamentals of language construction and explore literacy, a sophisticated and relatively new human invention. In modern society, literacy has become an integral part of human development, defining features of language. Every language has unique characteristics children must learn. Let's revisit and further describe those components of language that were first introduced in 3.5 language in infants and toddlers, beginning with the smallest components. Phonology. Recall that phonology is the branch of linguistics that studies the sound systems of languages, the way sounds are organized and combined to form words and sentences. This is done by analyzing phonemes, or the smallest units of sound. For example, the word bit has 3 phonemes, /b's bar /I bar /t spart. Native speakers of a language distinguish between different phonemes and use them correctly in words and sentences, even though they may not be consciously aware of the phonetic rules governing their use. Phonological awareness, or the ability to recognize and manipulate the sounds of language, like /b, I, ba, t, /, is a key component of reading and writing skills. Some languages have more phonemes than others, or use tone or pitch to differentiate between words. For instance, the fact that in American English, we pronounce bass differently to mean a deep sound and a type of fish is just one example of the way phonemes differentiate the meaning of otherwise similar words. Language development and linguistics researchers have identified around 800 phonemes among various languages. Kuhl, 2015. Studying phonology can provide insights into the features of different languages. the way humans acquire language, and the way language is processed by the brain. Morphemes. Morphemes are the smallest units of language that have meaning. They include prefixes, suffixes, and roots, the building blocks of words, and they can also be isolated words. For example, the word unfillable combines 3 morphemes, each with its own unique meaning. Un plus fill plus able, un meaning not, fill as in the verb, and able meaning capable of. Morphemes are integral to spoken, written, and signed languages. As children expand their implicit understanding of morphological structures, they enhance their vocabulary and comprehension skills. That is, as they begin to recognize the way morphemes combine and alter words, they become able to decode unfamiliar words. In turn, their reading and communication skills improve. Morphological awareness not only aids in vocabulary development but also plays an important role in syntactic and semantic understanding, which contribute to overall language learning proficiency. Semantics. The study of the meaning of words and sentences in a language is called semantics. It looks at the way words are used and understood in different contexts. Part of learning language is recognizing these diverse contextual meanings. For example, the word sick can refer to being ill, or, in modern slang, being awesome. As children gain an understanding of diverse meanings of words and phrases, they are able to more easily navigate social and academic environments. Syntax. The set of rules that govern the way we combine words to form phrases, clauses, and sentences in a language is called syntax. It orders the structure of sentences and the ways in which words are arranged and changed to convey meaning, such as through subject-verb agreement, verb tense, the use of modifying adjectives and adverbs, and word order. For example, the standard word order in English is subject-verb-object. English also generally places adverbs and adjectives before the words they modify, as in, I really like your blue dress. Spanish, however, puts the modifiers after, as in, me gusta mucho tu vestido azul. I like very much your dress blue. Syntax also helps us analyze variations in sentence structure. We can see how the arrangement of words influences the interpretation. When we change the sentence, the child ate a banana, to the banana ate a child. When children learn more vocabulary and improve their language skills, they use more diverse syntax and improve their communication skills. Grammar. While syntax governs the order of words, it is grammar that enables us to communicate accurately. Grammar codifies a language's rules of usage, pronunciation, tone, and word order, encompassing both syntax and morphology. Our mastery of grammar goes through an extraordinary transformation in early childhood. Children transition from overextensions of grammar rules, also known as overregularization, to greater mastery of grammar rules. For example, they transition from grammar mistakes like, I runned with my dog, to the correct, I ran with my dog. Grammar consists of rules, but it is also shaped by the social and cultural context in which it is used, reflecting regional dialects, SES, and cultural norms. For example, African American Vernacular English, AAVE, has a distinct grammar that differs from Standard English, including unique features such as the use of double negatives. Kuranek and Weaver, 2021, Rickford et al., 2015. Research suggests that AAVE is often associated with negative stereotypes and biases as early as preschool age. Harrison Schroeder, 2013. These biases can have negative implications for the cognitive, social, and academic outcomes of Black children who speak it, and for Black adults in encounters with law enforcement, the legal system overall, and the workplace. Kuranek and Weaver, 2021. It is essential to address these biases early through education and awareness-raising efforts. Children also tend to seamlessly engage in code switching, the practice of alternating between 2 or more languages or language varieties based on their dialogue partner or the setting of the conversation. They can naturally switch between English and their family's native language at home, and then speak English with teachers and friends at school. This linguistic phenomenon is more prevalent in multilingual or multicultural environments and can occur for social, cultural, or situational reasons. Code switching allows children to be comfortable in different social contexts and convey subtle meanings, cultural affiliations, or emotions. Pragmatics. In contrast to semantics, pragmatics is the way we use language in different situations, what we intend when communicating, and the cultural norms that govern language use. For example, thanks can sound sincere, sarcastic, or even flirtatious depending on tone and body language. A child's use of words and expression is likely to be different during a classroom lesson than on the playground. Figure 5.20. In early childhood, the development of pragmatic skills includes learning how to take turns in conversation, ask and answer questions, and use eye contact and body language to convey meaning. Even young children adjust their language based on the social context and the people they are communicating with, as in code switching and the use of different meanings for words like sick. Soon they will develop the pragmatic skills to persuade, negotiate, and perhaps manipulate. As cognition becomes less egocentric, children take the listener's perspective into account and might change their intonation and emphasis to clarify meaning. Language and cognitive growth and communication. Language development is essential to human development and serves as both a window into our cognitive processes and a tool for communication and social interaction. In children, language development provides a critical foundation for overall cognitive and socio-emotional development. While language learning comes readily to most young children, adults who have attempted to learn an additional language know it is a complex process that requires considerable effort. This difficulty demonstrates that there are critical and/or sensitive periods for learning language, and they end well before early childhood ends at age 7. In other words, childhood is an optimal period in which to learn both your first language and a second language as well. The well-known case of Jeannie, a severely neglected and abused child who at 13 years old had not been exposed to much language, demonstrates the impact of environmental effects on long-term language acquisition. Curtis, 1977. However, far less extreme circumstances than Jeannie's have direct effects as well, as shown in studies by Hart and Risley, 1995, and others. In addition, children who are deaf or hard of hearing may develop language deficits due to their diminished language exposure. This risk is higher when disabilities are left undiagnosed, making early intervention and detection critical to promoting language development for all. Language as a window into cognition. Language is often described as a window into cognition because it provides insight into the underlying cognitive processes that allow us to think, reason, and solve problems. Federmeyer et al., 2020. For example, language allows us to form categories, make predictions, and infer relationships between words and concepts. These processes are integral to cognitive development. Studying language development also provides insight into cognitive deficits and developmental delays. For instance, children with language impairments may exhibit difficulty with grammar and syntax, often initial indicators of cognitive deficits. McGregor et al., 2022. Similarly, children with autism spectrum disorder often struggle with language development and social communication. Their difficulties in processing social cues and inferring meaning in social interactions suggest that cognition plays a role in language and socialization. Language as a tool for communication and learning. Of course, language is also a powerful tool for communication. It allows us to express needs, share experiences, and form social connections. It helps children develop theory of mind and perspective taking. Moreover, language use and exposure play significant roles in shaping children's psychosocial development. For example, positive and responsive language interactions between parents and children are associated with better psychosocial outcomes, such as increased empathy and better social skills. Frosch and Shop-Sullivan, 2021. Language-rich environments promote better cognitive outcomes in children too, including a more robust foundation to acquire reading and writing skills, essential components of academic success. Logan et al., 2019. Research has attempted to both confirm and broaden our knowledge of family talking behaviors that lead to language and communication differences. Gilkerson et al., 2017, used automated recorders to collect speech data from children and their caregivers, and found significant variability within and across SES groups, primarily based on mother's education level. While there was a wide range of vocabulary skills within both high and low SES families, SES was a predictive factor for the way families interact. Children of mothers with a higher education talk more, have more adult-child interactions, and are more engaged overall. Because early language skills are strong predictors of a child's later academic success, these results offer important implications for improving language development for all children. Durham et al., 2007. These conclusions also indicate the need for early interventions designed for at-risk children. Those who are raised in impoverished language environments can benefit from home visit programs, high-quality childcare, and pre-kindergarten programs. Figure 5.21. These have been shown to improve early language exposure and lead to better long-term outcomes for children. Bierman et al., 2018, Vernon Fegans, and Bratch-Hines, 2013, Williams et al., 2020. The simple understanding that talking more improves outcomes has potential long-term benefits. Individual differences in language. Because language appears to come so naturally, we often take for granted the varied trajectories that exist among young language learners. In this section, we explore the differences, challenges, and advantages that might exist for different populations of children. Language development in deaf children. Children who do not receive any language input during their first 2 years of life, whether due to deafness or other factors, run the risk of never achieving language fluency. Hall et al. 2019, Humphreys et al. 2012. Therefore, children born deaf or hard of hearing are often at risk of delays in language acquisition and cognitive development if they do not receive appropriate support. Exposing deaf children to sign language early is crucial because it provides them both a visual and tactile form of communication to interact with their environment. Hall, 2018. American Sign Language, ASL, the most widely used sign language in the United States, is recognized as a natural language with its own grammar and syntax. Figure 5.22. ASL and other sign languages have the same defining features of language discussed previously. There is a distinct grammatical structure, including rules governing word order and sentence construction. Sign languages have similar phonological components, including morphemes and phonemes. These may be conveyed through specific hand shapes, movements, and facial expressions. Sign languages have their own syntax, governing the arrangement of signs to convey meaning. Symbols and signs convey semantics in a manner like that of voiced languages. As in voiced languages, pragmatic principles exist for different social and cultural contexts. Regardless of which languages we use, our brains process linguistic information in a comparable manner. Technology has introduced new ways for deaf children to learn language through devices like cochlear implants and hearing aids that can offer some auditory input. Speech therapy can also help children develop spoken language skills. Research does not necessarily support emphasizing deaf children use voice as the primary means of communication. Only a small fraction of children, 2 to 3 out of every 1,000, are born deaf, more than 90% of whom are born to hearing parents. Debate is ongoing over whether deaf children learn to speak because it benefits them or because it benefits others. Hall et al. 2019, Humphreys et al. 2022, Lieberman et al. 2022. Ultimately, early and consistent support from caregivers, educators, and medical professionals is the key to successful language learning in deaf children. With resources and guidance, they can develop strong language skills like any other child, and children of diverse abilities may all benefit from language learning resources, including sign language and other nonverbal communication forms. Development in multilingual environments. Children who grow up in multilingual environments learn and use multiple languages naturally. The process of acquiring multiple languages is not necessarily the same as acquiring a single language. Children may go through periods of mixing languages or may initially have a smaller vocabulary in each language. However, with continued exposure and practice, they easily become fluent in multiple languages. Moreover, exposure to multiple languages in childhood is an experience-dependent process that may shape cognitive outcomes, including improved executive attention and minor differences in the way the brain processes language. Bialystok, 2017. There is also some evidence of a lifelong cognitive advantage, including greater neural sophistication and a delay in the onset of some dementias. Birks and Bialystok, 2022. Liu and Wu, 2021. Children who speak multiple languages are also often better able to communicate and connect with people from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds. There are not necessarily any best practices for raising a multilingual child. Some multilingual families choose to have different adults speak in specific languages, while in others, every adult uses a mix of languages. Both approaches are successful, and early exposure provides the greatest advantage. Whatever approach is taken, it is essential to provide regular exposure and support for each language. Families in many countries, including the United States, Italy, and Indonesia, may also choose to enroll children in bilingual early childhood education programs, which may improve robust language development for children. Huang et al., 2023, Leota, 2023, Chang, 2024. Early literacy. Phonological awareness is the foundation for literacy, the ability to read, write, and understand information. Early literacy is enhanced by robust vocabulary development, phonological awareness, print awareness, and comprehension skills. Thus, children who have strong early literacy skills are more likely to enjoy academic success. Ram Suk et al., 2020. Parents and caregivers can support early literacy by reading to children regularly, supporting a text-rich environment with books and writing materials, and engaging in conversations and activities like storytelling and singing that promote language development. The repetition found in books and songs reinforces semantics, syntax, and grammar, and will promote a positive attitude towards reading. Reading books also furthers children's exposure to a wider range of vocabulary than they might hear in everyday speech and conversations. Early literacy skills can also be fostered through high-quality early childhood education programs. Substantial research demonstrates that investing in publicly funded early childhood education programs like Head Start provides cognitive, social, economic, and public health benefits. Campbell et al. 2014, McCoy et al. 2017, Negussi et al. 2019. Studies have even found a net monetary benefit. Children who are provided early services are less likely to require public funds later and are more likely to have a positive impact in their communities. Heckman, 2006, Varshni et al. 2022. Although research has extensively explored older children's use of tablets for reading, currently there is only limited understanding of the impact of digital reading in the early stages of literacy development. One review compared the impact of interactive, enhanced ebooks, that is, with embedded dictionaries, to that of print books, and non-enhanced, non-interactive ebooks on the literacy skills of young children. Lopez Escriban et al., 2021. Most of the books in the study were carefully chosen by teachers for artistic and literary quality. The analysis revealed that when high-quality material is used, both enhanced and non-enhanced ebooks are either equal to or have an advantage over print books in promoting phonological awareness and vocabulary learning. These findings have positive implications for marginalized populations, including those at risk of learning disabilities and those from lower SES families, and offer another alternative to standardized, school-based instruction. Robbie's dad finds rainy days to be the hardest. His 4-year-old son has trouble being cooped up indoors and is never happier than when he's zooming down the slide, concentrating on his monkey bar skills, or pretending to be a train engineer on the play structure at the playground. Play is an essential part of Robbie's development. It's a key component in his learning and socialization, and it fosters overall well-being. Through play, Robbie will explore his environment, engage with peers, and develop cognitive, physical, and emotional skills. Play will allow Robbie and his playmates to use their imagination, creativity, and problem-solving abilities in a natural, entertaining manner. Play does not require expensive toys or modern playground equipment. In many lower-income parts of the world, even very young children occupy themselves without adult supervision for considerable parts of the day. They find things to play with alongside laboring parents or older siblings. In wealthier countries, children play quite differently. But even in the United States, there is wide disparity in opportunities for play. Suburban and rural areas may have more open spaces than urban ones. However, urban areas may have easier access to walkable community playgrounds. Closer proximity to safe, accessible outdoor play areas promotes healthy psychological development. Perez del Pulgar et al., 2021. Caregivers with less access to high-quality playgrounds may need to find other ways to encourage physical play for children to reduce risks of poor physical health outcomes. McCarthy et al., 2017. In every play environment, Vygotsky's concept of social constructivism is evident, as children learn about the world around them and socialize accordingly. Ideally, we want to create environments where children like Robbie can explore, make decisions, and initiate activities in play. Encouraging curiosity and determination will strengthen their sense of self and set the stage for later accomplishments and identity development. In this section, you'll learn about types of play from a developmental perspective, and then play's connection to overall physical, cognitive, and psychosocial development, as well as its benefits and importance. Types of play. Mildred Parton was a renowned U.S. sociologist and researcher, best known for her seminal work on social play. Her research helps shape our understanding of the different types of play in which children engage and the social functions these activities serve. Based on her observations of children at nursery schools and playgrounds, Parton identified 6 different types of play. Table 5.3. Unoccupied play, solitary play, onlooker play, parallel play, associative play, and cooperative play. Her classification system provides a framework for the way play evolves over time and reflects changes in children's social and cognitive development. Parton, 1932. Play as context for development. In preschool, play is an avenue for physical, cognitive, and psychosocial development. Recall that children learn through observation by watching and imitating their peers and adults. This process exposes them to new ideas and ways of doing things they may not have known before. Play offers a wealth of opportunities to learn through imitation and interaction with both peers and adults. Imitation is particularly effective when children are engaged in challenging activities like building a block tower or entering a new pretend play environment. Play is not simply another way to move. Even play that lacks much movement, like playing board games, can foster cognitive development, hone social skills and emotional regulation, improve language and problem-solving skills, and even facilitate cultural understanding. Ginsberg et al., 2007. Importance of play. Play and everyday creative activities are essential to learning and a crucial component of children's development. Dios Benitez Sierra et al., 2022. They help children develop their language skills when they have conversations with others and use their imagination to create stories. Play helps children develop their fine and gross motor skills when they manipulate toys and objects and engage in physical activities such as running, throwing, and climbing. Figure 5.23. Play is also important for young children's mental health and well-being. It is a natural stress reliever and helps to manage emotions and anxiety. It provides a sense of joy and fulfillment, which contributes to self-esteem and confidence. The global scientific community has long been an advocate for children's unstructured free play. As long ago as 1989, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC, named play one of 54 fundamental human rights, stating that every child has the right to rest and leisure, to engage in play and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child, and to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. UN 1989. Nearly 200 countries have signed this international agreement. However, schools have become increasingly focused on academic achievement and structured learning. Overall, play has become less valued than in the past. Waters et al., 2022. Even preschools have reduced playtime in favor of more academic instruction, which can result in a variety of negative consequences for children's development and well-being. Kahan and Poulos, 2023. Tong Li et al., 2020. And despite recommendations from developmental scientists and other professionals, restricting play activity in schools remains a standard form of punishment in the United States. Global Recess Alliance et al., 2022. Kahan and Poulos, 2023. The COVID-19 pandemic further complicated this reduction in play. First, because most educational and childcare institutions closed for weeks or months, children had reduced opportunities for unstructured free play with peers, incurring a developmental disadvantage. Second, after children returned to school, educators were concerned about making up for lost time and raised academic demands while limiting play. Additionally, children's screen time increased during the pandemic and remained elevated even after restrictions on gathering indoors were lifted. Henderson et al., 2023, Lee et al., 2023, Neary et al., 2023, Scott et al., 2022. Peer learning and social constructivism. Peer learning, another developmental product of preschool play, is particularly effective when children are engaged in activities that require collaboration and cooperation, such as building imaginary cities or playing a game. Figure 5.24. Through these interactions, children develop their cognitive and social skills, and those who struggle to learn on their own can receive support and guidance from peers rather than adults. As a result, children are more likely to display pro-social behaviors like sharing and cooperating, and less likely to display negative behaviors such as aggression. Scott and Cogburn, 2022, Top et al., 2019. These outcomes should sound familiar. Recall Vygotsky's theory of social constructivism, which says learning occurs through social interactions. Thus, cognitive development is shaped by a child's cultural and social experiences. Learning is optimized when children are engaged in activities appropriate for their level of development and have opportunities to interact with more knowledgeable peers or adults. Therefore, collaboration through play provides a foundation for pro-social skills and cognitive pursuits. DeLay et al., 2016, Egham-Wilkins et al., 2014, Scott and Cogburn, 2022. Variations in play. Preschool children engage in similar play throughout the world, but there is quite a bit of cultural and other kinds of variability. Some children may also face socioeconomic or physical challenges. Let's explore these differences. Cross-cultural differences in play. Early childhood play activities vary widely across cultures, influenced by factors such as social norms, beliefs, values, and geographical location. Sims and Hutchins, 2011. For example, some cultures may place a greater emphasis on physical play, such as running, jumping, and climbing, while others may focus more on imaginative play, such as storytelling, puppetry, and role-playing. Gongku, 1993. Leisterer Peoples, 2021. Stengelin et al., 2020. Stengelin et al., 2023. One culture that emphasizes physical play is that of the Maasai people in East Africa. From a young age, children are encouraged to engage in jumping contests and spear-throwing games, Figure 5.25, in addition to football, soccer, volleyball, and variations of games like tag. These activities develop physical strength and endurance and prepare children for the physical demands of a semi-nomadic lifestyle and management of natural resources and livestock. Garvey, 1990. Tian et al., 2021. In contrast, the Inuit culture in Canada and Greenland stresses imaginative play, such as storytelling and role-playing. Children are encouraged to develop their creativity, often using natural materials such as snow, ice, and animal skins to create their own toys and games. Storytelling is a central part of Inuit culture, and children are often taught traditional stories and legends through play and storytelling activities. Lutkenhouse and Thomson, 2013. The availability and use of outdoor play spaces varies as well. For example, in Scandinavian countries, outdoor play is a central part of early childhood education, and children are often encouraged to engage in unstructured play in natural settings. Dankyu et al., 2020. Einersdottir, 2011. Even in the winter in other northern climates, unstructured nature play is considered essential. Figure 5.26. Despite challenges due to a frigid climate much of the year, schools generally do not let weather impede scheduled outdoor activities. It not only benefits physical health, but research shows that children who participate in more nature activities show similar kindergarten readiness as those who attend more academically focused preschools. Being outside also improves executive control, an important precursor to school success. Cordiano et al., 2019, Ernst et al., 2021, Zamzau and Ernst, 2020. In the United States, preschoolers engage in a variety of play activities, both indoors and outdoors, including games of tag, hide-and-seek, and Simon Says. Imaginative play with dolls, stuffed animals, and pretend kitchens is also encouraged. Some young children participate in organized sports, dance classes, and other physical activities. In some environments, group play is emphasized to help children learn social skills. Elsewhere, individual play is encouraged to foster creativity and self-reliance. The types of toys and materials available to children can vary widely as well. Some parents may be perfectly comfortable strolling a garden while their children pick up bugs and explore natural materials like sticks, stones, and leaves. Figure 5.27. Others may limit children to cleaner indoor activities. Some parents and educators might use more plastic toys, whereas electronic devices may be more common for others. A singular activity does not always have a profound impact on a child's developmental trajectory, but both adult behaviors and play activities can lead to varying behaviors and thought among groups of children. Wiseman et al., 2019. Play and gender. There is no doubt that traditional gender roles influence the types of play activities encouraged for boys and girls in many cultures. For example, boys may be encouraged to engage in heightened physical play and competition, while girls are guided toward quieter activities like drawing and storytelling. Telford et al., 2016. However, especially at the preschool level, children should never be limited or discouraged in play because of the way they look or their biological sex. All children should be treated equally when presented with opportunities to play and socioeconomic status. The influences of SES, specifically income and neighborhood factors, extends into play as well. On average, children from lower-income families live in smaller houses or apartments and closer to urban centers. These circumstances disproportionately influence their play experiences. Compared to peers in suburban or rural areas, children in urban areas have more limited outdoor play spaces, which also leads to lower levels of physical activity. Bao et al., 2021. In these and other settings, smaller indoor play areas and limited outdoor spaces can have a negative impact on overall health and well-being. Bento and Diaz, 2017. SES also affects play behaviors in ways that reflect families' social and economic circumstances. Children from higher SES backgrounds usually have access to a wider range of toys, materials, and structured activities. While there are clearly benefits to structured activities like recreational sports and educational toys, unstructured, imaginative play has clear benefits as well. Dankyu et al. 2020. Lee et al. 2022. Tong Lee et al. 2020. Recognizing and valuing diverse play styles allows us to support children's development from multiple perspectives. It also fosters cross-cultural understanding and promotes a sense of belonging among all children. Play and differing abilities. While mobility barriers often limit the play opportunities of preschool children with physical disabilities, active play improves their cognition, motor skills, balance, coordination, and overall physical fitness as it does for any child. Shields and Sinat 2016. Active play also helps prevent obesity, a more common problem among children with physical disabilities. Walker et al. 2019. Play provides opportunities for younger children with disabilities to interact with their typically developing peers and develop a sense of belonging. Yet it appears there are social barriers as well. Both parents and teachers report that preschool children with physical disabilities face challenges in engaging with their peers. Ebers et al. 2021. To overcome this constraint, preschools can focus on early introduction of routine outdoor play, emphasizing both inclusive play spaces and inclusive activities that can take place there. Figure 5.28. Training preschool and kindergarten teachers in these practices will help integrate children with disabilities into everyday play activities, and changing the mindset of typically developing children and their parents is important for achieving more equity in social opportunities during play. Ebers et al. 2021. James et al. 2022.